Hi folks, Jeff here. When David Boyer approached me with the idea of collaborating around this year's Chronicle Season of Sharing Fund, he had me when he mentioned emergency rental assistance. I count myself among the many folks here in the Bay Area and around the country and the world who were one financial or health crisis away from finding themselves with no place to call home, no proverbial roof over their head. I consider myself lucky as fuck. I'm a white, cisgendered, straight man who came from suburbia. I have 2 college degrees, and the persistent debt that comes with those. And I've been steadily employed most of my adult life. In fact, I've now had the same job with plush benefits for nearly 16 years. I have rent control in San Francisco. And yet, without going into too much detail, I could be evicted, along with my wife and our 2 dogs, if any number of very realistic things that are out of my control took place. And so, because I can relate to the audio stories that David and others are telling, I wanted to get the work that the Chronicle Season of Sharing Funding is doing to help folks in those situations stay in their homes out to a broader audience. Namely, you. And so I'll turn it over to David, who in this episode speaks with Oakland's Keoni, Washington, one recipient of rental assistance from Season of Sharing.
Hello, and welcome to Sharing Stories, a seasonal podcast featuring profiles of help and hope from the Season of Sharing Fund. I'm David Boyer.
Hi.
Today, we'll meet an aspiring boxing champ, Keoni, Washington, at the East Bay apartment he shares with 3 of his brothers. He's helped take care of them since their mother passed in 2020, early in the pandemic.
Appreciate you guys for selecting me.
Keoni leads me to the building's outdoor common area, and we sit at a picnic table. He's surprised that Season of Sharing asked him to share his story.
Because I think people are going through stuff all the time, so why am I special? At the same time, it's like, I guess it's a good story to get out there, you know? Yeah. My name's Keoni, Washington. I am the second oldest of 4. I've got an older brother. He stays in Arizona, and it's just me and my 3 younger brothers. So we're all close in age. I'm 22. I got 2 twin brothers. They're 20 now. And then I have another younger brother that's 21.
What's like a normal, typical day like for you?
I work 2 jobs. I have a job working at a school. I'm like the security kind of for after school program. I work there from 12 to 6, and then I work at Jack in the Box on this corner right here. From midnight, I work there to 4. But in between times, like early in the morning, before I go to the school job, I'll go for a run. And then about 7 o'clock, I'll go to the gym and work out there. And when I get done with my workout, I'll probably take like a little nap, and then I got to go to work again. So that's like a typical day.
Keoni and his brothers moved to California with their mom in the summer of 2016.
My mom kind of wanted to move here to like get a better life. The job that she had wasn't really paying that well. She was working as a CNA. It's like the in-home caregivers, the nursing assistants. And so she heard that the pay was better over here. And plus her significant other at the time, he had been in our lives for a long time, and he was from California. So he had family here we could stay with. So my mom was like, let's load up the U-Haul, we'll all just go. And my older brother ended up staying back in Arizona.
It took him a beat to get used to the local taste in music and food. Otherwise, it felt kind of familiar.
I've always kind of stayed in like lesser areas, like not the best of neighborhoods. Coming here, it wasn't like I was surprised that it was bad. It was like, oh, it's just another neighborhood.
One thing the neighborhood did have is a boxing gym, which Keoni discovered in the first days of the pandemic.
I really got into boxing to lose weight because I was getting bigger and there was no gyms open. But this gym was open right here. I had seen the kids working out in the back. I called up to get all the information, and they said I can come in. I worked out a couple times, and then I sparred. So sparring is like a practice fight just to see if my skills were good. And I ended up liking it. I did pretty good. And they were like, hey, you should try to maybe fight. And I was really big. I was like 300 pounds when I started boxing. But like I lost about like almost 100 pounds. So that's what kept me going too, like seeing the weight come off. It was like, yeah, I should keep going.
What do you like about it?
I guess I like that I can be focused on one thing. Everything is like tuned out. I don't have to worry about going to work. I could just work about being in control of bettering myself. For like an hour, I'm in control. Plus, it's a one-on-one sport, but really you have a team and a brotherhood because there's other people like you who have the same story, who are maybe poor, or who are trying to better their life as well. And you come up with those guys, and it's like, oh, now we're building a relationship together. So it's like I made another family being at the gym. And my little brothers had taken a liking to it too, and we were just all in the gym. It was like we were bonding, and then plus the people I was meeting too. I didn't really have like friends outside of school. I had a couple, but it was like we're all dividing again because of the pandemic. We can't talk to each other. They're doing their own thing. Their lives are getting better. They're going to college, stuff like that. So I was like, man, I got a chance to make some friends. I got a chance to like maybe like do something I really, really like. Plus I started doing well. So I was like, you know, why don't I just keep trying?
Keoni was in his senior year of high school when the pandemic started.
I had just finished playing a sport in school. And so we were about to have prom, but they canceled all the school events. That day they had sent everybody home, and I had just ended up getting a job working at that Jack in the Box. So I've been there for a long time.
At first, he really didn't think COVID was a big deal.
I don't really pay attention to like the news. So like I was just going along like, oh, this is just like the flu or something. But then, you know, COVID had shut everything down. So it was like I was going to work, then I was coming home, and then I was going to the boxing gym. So that's like my whole life consisted of just the same thing over and over again.
So tell me about your mom, if you're cool with talking.
I'm fine talking about my mom. So my mom's name is Keoni. She was a very caring person. She was like the type of person to give like the clothes off her back to us or anybody she cared about before she did anything for herself. Like sometimes I remember us coming home and there not being like food in the house. And she would like whoop up whatever she could or spend her last couple dollars on getting us food, and she wouldn't eat for like a couple days. She'd like be drinking just water while we're eating the food in the house. She would work whatever job she could get. She didn't want to depend on anybody else. Very loving and a hard-working individual, like person that's trying to stay on the path to make sure we're okay. Like it was us before anything else.
His mom tested positive for COVID just a few days before New Year's.
I had gotten a job pre-apprenticeship for a construction company, and I was talking to my mom about like moving out, but she was saying she wasn't feeling good like near that time. She thought she just had a headache. So like for the last couple of days, she would take me to work, but she would tell me like every day, oh, I have a headache, I got a headache. Then she didn't have the strength to get up. And she was like, maybe around January like 5th or 6th, she was like, oh, let me go to the hospital. I need to see if I have COVID. And like surely enough, when I got back home from work, she was like, I got the test results back. I got COVID. And she was just staying in her room. Her condition was getting worse. I was like coming back and forth from work, trying to take care of her. Me and my brothers were. That was like the beginning of 2021.
He didn't really have time to process what was going on. He had his younger brothers to worry about.
I was like, oh, what are we gonna do type of thing. Because after that, I'd say those next couple of days, she had ended up going to the hospital. I had to call the hospital to come and get her. So for like a couple days, it was just me and my brothers in the house. And her friend would come back and forth to check on us. And so I was really just looking out for my brothers, like going to get them food and things like that. I was like, I gotta take care of them. My mom's counting on me. She would call me from time to time and be like, oh, is everything all right at the house? And she would tell me to like, oh, make them this, make them that.
And did you think everything was going to be okay?
So it kind of seemed like it because we had got a call from my mom's friend, and it was like she was getting better, and they had moved her to like a different room of patients that were getting better. Like I was thinking like, oh, everything's cool. She should be coming back home soon. And then maybe like 2-3 days later, my uncle had called me like late at night, like around 9 p.m. And he was like, hey, your mom passed away. We're coming down there right now to come see you guys. And man, like I can remember everything. Like that day was crazy. I didn't want to tell my brothers, but I was like overcome with emotion. So I was like punching holes in the wall. Then my brothers saw me crying, and what are they supposed to think? They could only think the worst. So they started crying. We're breaking all the stuff in the house. And so after that, we had to all go to the hospital to get tested to see if we had it. I was the only one that didn't get it. Yeah.
What do you do?
We didn't know what to do. Like in the beginning, we were just in the house, like lights off, everybody in their rooms. We're not talking to each other. We would go into our mom's room and just sit in there from time to time for like a long time, not talking or doing anything. People would try to call us. We're not answering calls. And then like one day, actually our coach had called us. Our coaches, it's two of them. They're like twins. They had called us, and they were like, "Hey, you guys want to try to come to the gym, maybe work it off?" And like from there, that's when we started really getting back out of the house. The gym family kind of surrounded us, and then our church, our pastor, and then our mentor, they would just come to our house like nonstop, beating on the door, coming in the house like, "Oh, you guys got to get up. You guys got to get out the house. You guys can't just sit here and be depressed." Like they were trying to shake us out of it because, you stay in a rut too long, it's not too good. So, yeah.
The brothers had to decide what to do next.
We were contemplating like going back to Arizona. My family wanted us to come back out because they were afraid like, oh, what if something else happens? It's just me and my brothers. We don't have no blood family out here. So they were like, oh, you guys need to come back. And they were talking to our pastor and our mentor and our boxing coaches. And they were like, hey, they need to come back. But we had made the decision together, me and my brothers. And we were like, our mom didn't come down here for no reason. Like, we got to try to stay out here, and we don't really care how hard it gets. We got to do something, because it'd be like we failed the mission and we just came out of here for no reason. So our next move is really, we got to get jobs. We got to figure out a way to get everything in our name, like all the bills, things like that. Didn't have really time to grieve. It's just like, we got to go, because, the world gonna keep moving. We got to keep going. My brothers, they had to go to school. I had to get a job closer. I had to go back to Jack in the Box because I had to get on my brother's schedule, taking them to school. I had to handle business at home, so everything kind of like took a hold, like for me, yeah.
More than anything, Keoni had to make sure his brothers graduated high school.
For the longest, it was hard to get them to go to school because they're grieving, and their way of grieving was like not talking to anybody, not wanting to go to school and talk to people. But I was like, you guys throw this away. This could probably be like your only chance of getting out of the hole. You accomplish this, and then you have an opportunity to go on and do so many other things. And then by the grace of God, our mentor and our boxing family and our pastor stuck by us, and my brothers ended up getting on the program and was like realizing we got to do this for mom. And so we all ended up working together, and they graduated high school. And then my other brother, he ended up graduating too. So like, it's kind of hard when we're all close in age, and I'm just the older brother. I'm that authority figure, but at the same time, they're like 2 years younger than me. So it's like, oh, I'm kind of gonna do what I want to do.
How does money work?
It was kind of hard. I was the only one really that kind of had a job in the beginning. We didn't know what we were doing, like paying bills wise. I didn't know how to pay bills. I didn't know how to, like, who am I supposed to come and talk to about the rent or PG&E and stuff like that. So we had to get with all these older people around us to give us wisdom on how to pay bills. And it was like explaining, this goes here, you gotta log into this to do this. Then it took a minute for us to like get everything put in my name. So for the longest, like, I was trying to do what I could to pay all the bills by myself. Then it's still like a work in progress now, but my brothers started coming around. They realized, oh, they had to get jobs too now. Now we're like all roommates. Like, we're brothers, but we're roommates at the same time. So we depended on each other, so it's still a work in progress. Like, money wise, it's still we still learning, like, you know.
So now, where does Season of Sharing fit into all of this?
Last year, at maybe the end of 2023, we had gotten like in a hole. For the longest, I wasn't really doing the paperwork on how things were supposed to go, so we got behind. Like when I get a different job or when I'm not making this much money, I'm supposed to tell somebody. And I didn't know that. I thought, I'd get a different job, I gotta save and put money away into these bills, but I didn't know how things work, so we got behind. Miss Catherine, she made some calls.
Ms. Catherine is Catherine Joyner, an affordable housing caseworker in the East Bay. She connected Keoni and his brothers to local resources, including the Season of Sharing Fund.
Miss Catherine, she was the one that kind of put everything in place for us to be where we're at now. So, like, if it wasn't for her, I don't think we'd really even be here. Yeah.
Wow.
And Season of Sharing ended up blessing us and kind of bringing us into like a better situation. So,
because applications are largely handled by people like Miss Catherine, I was curious what he knew about Season of Sharing Fund.
they help people who are like in dire situations, who are like behind on like utilities, bills, rent, things like that, and they kind of like bring you back to life. Like they gave us an opportunity to catch up, and I'm thankful for it. But the biggest thing I wanted out of this was us to come together and not like divvy off on our own paths. Like we are sooner or later, but right now we need each other. So without Season of Sharing, me and my brothers could be on the streets. We could all have abandoned each other, gone crazy, sold drugs. So I would say that they're like that big brother, you know, like when you get pushed on the ground, that big brother's like, oh, here, get up, like you got it. That's them to me.
Season of Sharing's help, a few months of back rent, came right when Keoni and his brothers were at a low point.
At that time, I was kind of like losing hope. Like I was like, man, I don't know how we're gonna do it, but so I was happy, you know. I was like, man, this is wonderful, man. Like, you know, it took like a big weight off my back, because like once you get behind, it's hard to come back up, and they gave us a chance to catch up, so we could finally like have a start.
Keoni recommitted to boxing. He turned out to be a natural. His coaches saw his potential, and he began training for competitions, including U.S. Nationals, where he won a silver.
And I qualified to fight for the Olympic qualifiers.
A 21-year-old Antioch boxer is spending this Thanksgiving pushing toward his Olympic dream, and he's overcome some incredible odds already. His mother died of COVID-19 at the height of the pandemic, leaving him as the caretaker for his 3 teenage brothers. As NBC Bears' Jody Hernandez tells us, Keoni Washington hasn't just kept his family together. He's channeled his grief into a quest for Olympic gold.
Unfortunately, I wasn't good enough to make the cut, and I ended up losing like the first match to a really good guy. When you get to that level, that's like the kids that's been fighting since like 8 years old, and me being like new, I wasn't like accustomed to like people moving that fast, and I'm like, man, but I was happy like to even get a shot to make it that far, and it gave me more motivation. I know there's like a better life for me ahead, you know, so I'm still out here trying.
There have been times when he's thought about quitting, days when it's hard to motivate. Then he goes to the gym and sees all the younger boxers.
I feel like I'm a role model to these kids, and maybe I could get an opportunity to bring some of these kids with me, like that are going through the same thing as me, and give them like mentorship on how to like escape hard times. Like, well, I'm still going through hard times, but like overcoming, you know? So
I ask him what he's proud of.
I'm proud of how far we came. Definitely proud of us making the decision to stay here, because you know I could have left to Arizona and been taken care of, but there's no growth in that, you know. So and then I'd feel like, oh man, I let my mom down. Like, you know, she came here for a reason. She wanted to make it a better life. She always wanted a house, a car. I'm hoping we can make that dream come true and just grow up and just become good men. That's really all. Like, you know, the men that our mom wanted us to be.
Before we part, I asked Keoni what he'd say to people who are thinking about donating to the Season of Sharing Fund.
I would say do it. You may never know. You may donate to a person and it may make something great out of it. You know, they may plant the seed and you know, have a tree. So I would say do it. You know, it'll put something on your heart, and you could always remember, hey, like I contributed to that person becoming a better person.
Thanks for listening to Sharing Stories, a seasonal podcast from the Season of Sharing Fund. The fund provides one-time financial assistance to individuals and families in the Bay Area during times of crisis, when a little support can have an enormous impact. Together, we help our neighbors remain housed, cared for, and nourished so they can get back on their feet. If you want to hear more stories like Keoni's, go to seasonofsharing.org/podcast. And if you want to give peace of mind to a neighbor in crisis, you can donate to the Season of Sharing Fund there too. 100% of your donation will go to providing relief to local people experiencing unexpected crises. Until next time, I'm David Boyer, and this is Sharing Stories.
Thanks for listening to this bonus episode, the last of 2024. I'll be off for the rest of the year and back on January 7th with an all-new episode on 4 siblings who run Puerto Alegre Mexican restaurant in the Mission. Happy New Year! Music for Storied San Francisco was produced, performed, and curated by Otis McDonald. Our contributing producer is Aaron Lim of Bitch Talk Podcast. And the show is produced and hosted by me, Jeff Hunt. Now in our 7th season, we have more than 220 episodes available on our website, storiedsf.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If possible, please, please, please rate and review the show. I want to know what you think. Follow us on Instagram and Threads at storiedsf, and reach out to us there or email us at storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Be extra careful crossing the street. And keep being wacky, creative, and kind out there. See you next time on Storied San Francisco. We acknowledge and respect the first humans of the unceded land we call San Francisco, the Ramaytush Ohlone. We condemn the genocide of these and other tribes across the Western Hemisphere. We honor their legacy and history, and we support rematriation and sovereignty efforts.
This podcast is a proud member of the BFF.FM podcast network. Learn more at podcasts.bff.fm.
BFF.FM, best frequencies forever.